So I think it should go without saying that if we really want to be effective in building bridges into our community and developing relationships with people, then we really need to have a good understanding of our community. We need to understand, where are we in the midst of this community, and who is living around us? What is their background? What are their concerns really? And what is the DNA of the neighborhoods where God has called us to serve? Again, we are in a unique context, every single church, as you find yourself in your neighborhood. And so you want to know, really, what is that community around you? And how is it defined? And if we're not really understanding our community, then we don't want to just rush out and do a bunch of outreach. And this is one of the things that sometimes pastors and churches get tripped up in a little bit. And I wish that I could say that every single pastor I've worked with took the time to really go out and get to know their community first before they started jumping into outreach efforts. But that just isn't true. So I really want to encourage you as a pastor to not rush ahead. It's exciting, outreach is fun and exciting, but don't rush ahead quite yet. Let's slow down and let's make sure we really understand the people God has called us to. We want to tackle this right from the onset because you can really waste a lot of time, energy, effort, people power, money. You can waste a lot of resources if you kind of rush ahead and try to do outreach without first understanding your community. So I want to just go through a few ways that you can really kind of dig in. And these are things that you can do as a pastor. I encourage you to bring your leadership team along and really kind of process through these to get to know your community better. So the first thing that I recommend is to talk to local school principals, counselors, and teachers. In one of my ministry assignments, I was new to the church, and we had an elementary school that was right across the street. And one of the very first things that I did was I set up a meeting with the principals and counselors. And I'm so glad I did. I went there, I introduced myself, told them I was a new pastor in town, and we were just looking for an opportunity to see if there's any way that we could help serve that particular school. But what I also did was ask a lot of questions because I wanted to learn what our community was all about, and what better place to learn than a school that's across the street. And I was surprised to learn a lot of things about our immediate community that I did not yet know. And I took some of those learnings back to our board the next month whenever I met with our ministry leaders, and I shared those, and a lot of them were shocked because they didn't even realize what was going on in the immediate community. So it's super important before you do outreach is to really begin learning that community. Talk with the schools, talk with the principals, the counselors, and the teachers, because they have a really good understanding of what's taking place in your neighborhood. So make time to do that. The second thing I suggest is to interview people in the neighborhood. And some of you might be like, I'm not real sure about that, but really getting feedback from people in the neighborhood is one of the best ways to understand what the average person living there might be thinking or feeling, right? So this is a great way to get to know your community. I have a friend that I was talking to. He has planted several churches in the Chicago area. And one of the things that they do is they send people from their church just to go to the bus stops in Chicago and just have conversations with people. And they introduce themselves. They let them know that they're from the church. And they say, hey, we just want to get to know our community better. Can you share with us any struggles or any needs that you might see in the community? And man, they share all kinds of things. It just opens up doors for conversation. It's a great way for you to get to know your community better, and that's just finding places where people congregate and really just asking them questions. It's important to let them know that, hey, you care about the community. You're not trying to grill them over things, but you let them know, hey, we have compassion for our community. We care about our community. We would love to get to know more about it. So that's a great way, is to take some time to interview some people and to learn more and let them know that you genuinely care. Another thing that I recommend is for you to take time to talk with other pastors and ministry leaders in your community. Now, it's unfortunate because oftentimes insecurities and a lack of trust and feelings of competition often keep pastors and ministry leaders from getting together. But don't let that be you. I want to encourage you as a pastor to take the time to reach out to your fellow pastors, take them out for a cup of coffee, go to breakfast or lunch with them, and just begin talking about your community and remind them that you're not there in competition with them, but you're there to lock arms with them as together you guys are seeking to reach more people with the hope of Jesus Christ. We're all on the same team. And so you want to encourage them in that way and then begin to ask them, what have they learned? Oftentimes we have pastors in our communities who've been there much longer than we have, and there's so much that we can learn from them. So take the time to meet with other pastors and ministry leaders, ask them questions, and try to build that relationship there as well. Another great way for you to learn about your community is to do a demographic study. Now, there are all kinds of statistics that you can find. You can find a lot of these online, or you can hire an organization and get a study from an organization who compiles this data so you can learn more about your neighborhood, learn more about your community. There are a handful of things I really encourage you guys to look at that would probably be helpful. Marital and family status, that's really important. So you know if there are a lot of families around you, or if there are single parents, or if there are empty nesters, whatever that might be. So that's some good data. Income levels are always helpful, and education levels. Ethnic backgrounds, of course, that's helpful as you're doing outreach efforts into the community. Crime rates helps you get to know what is going on in your community, if there's some gaps and some places that your church might be able to step in and serve. And then with some of these studies, you can even learn things such as people's hobbies or their interests or the level of volunteer engagement that they have. All types of information you can gather from demographic studies. It really gives you a good snapshot of what your neighborhood, what your community is really all about and how it's made up. So that's another great thing to do. And then probably the fifth thing that I'd really recommend you take time to do is talk to community leaders. So you've taken time to talk to, the principals or counselors at the schools. You've talked to some of the other pastors and ministry leaders. You've talked to just the average people, the everyday Joe on the street, and had those conversations. But also make time to talk to your community leaders. You can learn so much from them. One of my ministry assignments, I remember reaching out to the mayor's office and setting up an appointment to meet with the mayor. And it was such a good conversation, and I learned a ton about our community. And basically, I went in and I told her, I said, hey, our church is looking to see how we can help connect with our community and serve our community. So what are the greatest needs right now that are taking place? And she was more than willing to share with me several different needs that were really prevalent in our community. And I was able to take that information back, talk it over, and pray about it with our ministry leaders. And we were able to step into some of those areas and really begin to serve and build those bridges into our community. All of these ways really help us to understand who it is God has called us to serve. And that's so vitally important. Again, don't rush ahead and start trying to do outreach ministries without first taking the time to get to know those people God has called you to serve.